This man had been standing in the street all night. He was seen holding a sign in his hand. It reads, "I am deaf and blind. If you can help me cross the street, please pat me down." The young man looked at the empty street. After thinking about it for half a day, he carefully tapped the man on the arm. The man senses that someone is willing to help. He takes a pen and paper out of his bag and writes a message. He told the man that he wanted to take the number 15 bus. After the man read it, he gently helped the man turn around a little, so that the bus driver could see him better. He was about to leave. Turning his head, he saw the man smiling and raising his hands. The man hesitated for a moment. He chose to put his hand on his shoulder. Then, step by step, he led the man to the platform and sat down. Just then a text message arrived. It was a friend who had agreed to help the man for one night. It turned out he was just a homeless man. At the same time, the man wrote another message on a piece of paper. "When will the next bus be here?" The man took one look at the message on the stop sign. He turned around and started to worry again, because the man could not hear or see. He thought for a while and then, he tapped the man's hand 10 times, indicating that the bus would be here in 10 minutes. As the man nodded his head in response, he was relieved to be on his way to his friend's house. The bus across the street drove off without waiting for the sleeping passengers. If he had left like that, could a man who couldn't hear or see really get on the bus? He sat down next to the man again. He patted his leg with his hand. He said that he was always there. The man reciprocated his kindness with gratitude, without any words to communicate. But the two lonely hearts found a home in this cold winter night. The man picked up a pen and wrote down that he wanted to buy a bottle of water. The young man was afraid that he might miss the bus, so he put it in his hand and asked him if he could wait. The man immediately said he was thirsty. He had no choice. The man had no choice but to lead him to a nearby shop. But before he could walk a few steps, the man almost tripped over the steps. The man was so frightened that he hastily apologized. He took him back by the hand and walked cautiously forward. When they reached the shop, the man trustingly took out his wallet and handed it to the guy. After the attendant gave him his change, he looked at the change in his wallet. He looked at the man's unseeing eyes. He took out a piece of change and slipped it into his pocket. Faced with the cashier's suspicious look, he hurriedly led the man away with him. Not long after leaving the shop, a bus drove by just in time. They missed it once again. The guy looked devastated, but the man feels nothing, happily sipping his drink, as if the rest had nothing to do with him. Maybe it was because of the guilt he had just felt. The guy continues to keep the man company. After finishing his drink, he took a pen and wrote, "When you get in, please tell the driver to go to number 128. When you get there, please give me a pat on the back." The man indicated in the palm of his hand that there was no problem. Just as he was putting the pen and paper back into his backpack, he accidentally found a bottle of water. Looking at the man's optimistic and cheerful look, the guy was also amused by his. The midnight temperature was getting colder and colder. The two of them were snuggled together and slowly fell asleep. A friend also sent a message. He said it was too late. He was already going to bed. "I had to stay on the street again tonight." Looking at the man who was sleeping with his head down, curious, the boy took his book. It was filled with words of help. There was even a note that said, "Can I kiss you?" Seeing this, the boy couldn't help but imagine the world such a man was facing. What kind of helplessness a person like this faces. He covered his ears with his hands. Then he closes his eyes. For a moment, a dark and deadly feeling of despair filled his body. When he opens his eyes again, the last bus was leaving. The man rushes to stop the driver. After he had put the man on the bus, he said seriously to the driver, "Make sure you take a picture of the man when you stop at street 128. Looking at the driver with an impatient look on his face, he couldn't resist.
He just wants to get home. I'm gonna take care of the man. Artie. I'm gonna take care of Artie."
Listening to the driver's assurances, he finally wrote on the man's hand, "Are you okay on your own?" The man still smiled and nodded, and responded in his poem that you too would be fine. Before he left, he gave him a loving hug. After watching the bus leave, the young man was already red-eyed. At the corner, he saw a sleeping homeless man, as if he thought of something, putting the change he stole from the man into the cup. At that moment, he felt so relieved, and his steps were lighter. Once he might have lamented the injustice of fate, but this experience made him understand once and for all, as long as there is goodness in his heart, even in a cold world, you can see the warmth in people's hearts.